So welcome everyone in the chat, and especially Mattias, to this 61st meetup of the Mainz crypto community. I'm really very happy and quite excited to have a special guest for tonight. It's Mattias Ohlson. He's the co-founder and the CEO of Emerging Cooking Solutions. I think he will give you the details in his talk. So this is very much about cooking, and cooking is a very basic thing. So it's very much about the livelihood of people in communities in Africa, specifically in Zambia. In our crypto community call now, I think the specific element is that just recently, Mattias and others introduced a new layer to this technology, which includes the use of blockchain, token, and so on. And that's what you want to present us tonight. So a very warm welcome to you, Mattias. And yeah, I would just hand over to you. Stage is yours.
Okay, fantastic. And super happy. Thanks so much for the invitation, and super happy to be here. And I will share some super exciting developments with you. I think it's basically a very fruitful partnership that we, meaning Emerging Cooking Solutions, have with IXO blockchain, which is a blockchain on the Cosmos ecosystem. And they have done a huge work in creating a platform essentially for verified outcome. It's like a digital platform, and I'll show all the details. And it really connects like the real world to blockchain. And maybe before diving into details, say who I am. Basically, I moved to Africa. I live in Zambia. I spent almost all my time there. I happen to be in Sweden now, but I lived there for 10 years and really came with a very single-minded idea of replacing charcoal with modern cook stoves. So we set up a pellet factory. This was 2013. It burned down a few years later, but we got started. We set up a new factory. There were many obstacles to overcome in the beginning, and technology wasn't ready. But fast forward to 2017, 2016, actually, we started with mobile money. And instead of sitting counting money in the evening from customers, not really knowing who did this come from, we basically digitized ourselves with mobile money, and that was a game changer. And that was the first stepping stone into a new age. We basically work with customers who are low income, who are using charcoal. We have developed that model now that enables us to reach the people who use charcoal. But it was kind of the beginning, because we realized that we didn't really know how much the stones were used. And it really bothered me, because I knew that some were used a lot, others were not used. And it wasn't the best use of our resources and what we were doing. So we developed a IoT platform. We connected the stoves to internet with a simple GSM 2G chip in there, and basically got a good sense of how they are used. So that was about 4 years ago. And suddenly we could really manage our portfolio of customers, because it's all about switching from charcoal to pellets. The pellets are made from forestry plantation waste. That really gave us a lot of kind of a good insight on how to manage the portfolio. But around the same time, I think 2017 or so, I got really interested in blockchain and the whole kind of Web3, emerging Web3 economy. And I saw the huge benefits of that for my world, which is basically emerging economies, people really living at the edge, but really, coming up and having a lot of needs. and I saw how relevant Web3 could be for this group of people. But of course, there weren't very many well-developed solutions, and it was like so nascent. But ideas started to form, and I was really active, also looking for solutions, and came across IXO about I think it was 2.5 years ago, and contacted the founder there, Sean Conway, and we very quickly realized we had the same vision, and that is basically to create a mirror image of the real world on blockchain in order to drive positive outcome. And very luckily, IXO really embraced the idea of clean cooking and dedicated, the majority of the resources, I would say, to developing this use case. And I think it's fair to say that probably 10,000 hours or more of development work have gone into it, which is now live, and I'll show you. But the whole idea is to basically solve the problems that we've seen. And there are multiple things. One is, of course, a layer of transparency and immutability and all of that is the base of blockchain. Another one is the kind of problems with transactions. There is, there's a lot of, when transactions are not transparent, it comes with a lot of, issues. And of course, the programmability of smart contracts and all of that. And it all ties into the fact that what could really drive not only the cook stove sector, but many other adjacent sectors, what could really drive that would be getting paid for a positive outcome. So carbon credit is the most obvious one because it's the only real market for positive outcome in a sense. But potentially there could be any of the sustainable development goals could be tokenized and monetized and drive exponential change because that's what we need. But maybe to step a bit and say who our customers are. So basically they live in so-called peri-urban areas. So they live in, close living quarters in cities. They use charcoal. Most of them don't have running water. They collect water. They have day jobs, or some have more formal jobs. They live around or below the poverty line. They earn $100 to $300 a month for a household. That's typical customers, and we're able to reach them. And I can just share my screen a bit and show you a little bit more about the customers. So here you see a picture of a customer cooking, and the stove here has a built-in fan. It has a battery that can be powered by a solar panel or by wall charging or USB, and it has a small electronics board. And this is what we have basically upgraded to be connected to internet, so that it records the data of the usage, the fan speed, and other things, like also a location. So we get this data and it is sent to us. The problem in terms of cooking that we're addressing is like this guy. I took this picture about 7 or 8 years ago, I think. He's making charcoal. He's chopped down some trees. He's turning it into a pile of charcoal or of wood that he's covering with earth. And it's a terrible waste of, first of all, beautiful trees, but also a terrible waste of energy, because not only is the forest cut down, it's a lot of just huge energy waste everywhere. And clean cooking leads to a lot of deaths from unhealthy gases, like particulate matter and other things. It has a bigger death toll than tuberculosis, malaria, and HIV/AIDS combined. Very few few people know this, but it's one of the major causes of death in the world today is from indoor air pollution. It takes a lot of time to start a charcoal fire. It takes like 20, 30 minutes and so on. So people spend a lot of time. It's quite slow to cook. And it's expensive. Globally, the cost from unclean cooking is in several trillions, about $2 trillion a year. That's a cost. And that could be turned around by about $2 billion. So it's a 1,000x return if the social costs were had the value. And that's, of course, a tremendous return. And the solution is to introduce something that people aspire to, equality, not a small step up, not just a efficient stove that is a bit better, use a bit less fuel, but really to switch fuel, which could be pellets, ethanol, biogas, electricity, and so on. But pellets is the best value for money. And as I mentioned, we're very early on leveraged appropriate technologies like mobile money, pay as you go, which means that they pay a little bit over time for the stove. And the market for this is huge. It's in many tens of billions of dollars in Africa, South of Sahara alone. And people spend about $20 to $30 per month on buying charcoal. And we can replace that with a cost half of that. So the customer savings is about 50% compared to charcoal. So we've also developed an extremely high-performing stove, which is now coming to the market. And most interesting for this talk is that IXO has developed this amazing IoT platform. We have now about 4,000 stoves, not 2,000, but 4,000 connected to internet. We have tens of millions of records of that. And it's really been a game changer for us. So before diving into the Web3 part, maybe I should just stop and see if there are any questions on like the first layers, which is basically clean cooking for people. So I think I'll just take a short pause there and see if there's any question.
Yeah, well, maybe it's a stupid question, but all stoves are connected to the internet. How in general is the connectivity in these nations or in this landscape? How is it organized? What about the bandwidth and things like that? I think it's very important for you to have to use this infrastructure, isn't it?
Absolutely. So that's a really great question. And so it works quite well. So it's all in peri-urban areas. So there is typically 4G and we actually use 2G. It's not a lot of data. It's a few megabytes a month that is needed to get all this data. But having said that, in theory, it should be like perfect connectivity. We're seeing a certain lack of, particularly the delays. And frankly, I don't know exactly why. Sometimes a stove is not better than German. Sometimes a stove is not connecting for, let's say, a week. And then, of course, all the data comes in later. We think it has to do with if a stove is maybe in a lot of, behind a lot of walls and it's trying to connect, the telcos might block that SIM card for a while if it's trying to connect a lot. Actually, I would love some more perfect powering. Yeah, I would love some more insight. But the IoT connectivity, it's not perfect. And some stoves fail to connect after some time, but it's more than 90% around that. But what is more important than the IoT data, and I only realized this some time ago, is actually the transactional data, because we also know exactly who is buying pellets. And what we're looking here for impact, we're looking for a proxy for usage. And of course, IoT data is a very good proxy for usage, but even better is when people buy pellets, because there is really no reason why someone would spend money on pellets if they're not using it in our stoves. in our context, it really does not make sense for anyone to spend, it's quite a expensive commodity, although it's a lot cheaper than charcoal. So we correlate this, and I'll go into it a little bit more soon, but the transactional data is like 99.9% reliable. It's basically someone paid for a bag of pellets, and we know who it is, and we know when it happened, and all of that. So that is really our base. And maybe a word on the methodology, because we are using a new methodology from Gold Standard called Gold Standard Metered and Measured. And what makes it different from the other older methodologies, AMS 1E and 2G, is that the carbon reduction is estimated based on the fuel usage, or rather the fuel sale. So we basically, it gives us a conversion factor. So 1 kilo pellets equals roughly 10.5 times the amount in CO2 equivalent. So that means that selling a bag of pellets is gives us an estimate of the carbon reductions, the greenhouse gas reductions. So it's a very simple calculation. Of course, there's a lot of calculations behind that with a baseline and various other factors like fraction non-renewable biomass, and it's about 25 different factors. But it's really the sale of the pellet bag. If we don't sell a pellet bag, there is literally 0 carbon credit. That's how it is structured. So that's what we're basing everything on. We also have 2 organizations validating that. One is based in Berlin. It's called Prospect Energy. And they validate the transaction. We make a claim. We say we sold a bag of pellets, and it has a certain transaction ID, and they validate that against the essentially bank statement from the telco. And then there is another company after that. So all these are different kind of steps or flows on the blockchain. So first validating the transaction, and then the IoT data goes through a French company called Scalnix, which is using causal AI and correlating the running time of the stove with the fuel purchases. So it's another layer of basically verification, and it gives a probability score. And if the claim passes that, which it usually does because it's quite well correlated, then there is a potential carbon credit. And potential, it's because the one who issues the carbon credit is actually not, it's not Emerging Cooking Solutions, it's not ICSO, it is the one who has a digital right to the digital data, to the ownership of the digital data. So it's essentially the one who kind of owns the future carbon credits, who has purchased that. So it's quite radical, I think, that the carbon credits are actually self-issued in a way, but it's of course based on verified data. So I'll take a little breather there and see if there is any other question.
Well, I had just a general question. So the ecosystem is much bigger than your company. I didn't get all the stakeholders there, but I assume there are some other partners in the ecosystem. Yes, you're not producing the pellets, huh? Didn't I get this right?
Yeah, so it's definitely bigger, and I actually have 2 hats. So the first hat is Emerging Cooking Solutions, and we distribute stoves and we produce pellets. So that is where currently all the data is coming from. It's from the Emerging Cooking Solutions activities. We have the IoT solution for the stoves and so on. But the platform is built, the ICSO platform is built very much with many other sectors in mind from the beginning. So this is the first use case. And which sectors it applies to most naturally potentially it could apply to all kinds of other sectors, but the ones that are almost identical are any sector which uses some kind of device which has quality data. So for example, solar pumps, they have data, they're replacing diesel pumps. They might have IoT data, they might have other things, e-mobility. For example, a charging cycle of a electrical motorbike might be a very good proxy for replacing petrol instead of driving with a normal motorbike. Off-grid solar panels and arrays and all of that, same thing. So there are a range of other sectors, particularly with devices. Of course, for soil and forestry and other sectors, there are other sources of data, but it's a little bit more tricky, and I know a lot of things are happening there also. But the low-hanging fruits are basically the device centric sectors, where you have a productive device that is doing something that generates positive impact. So I hope that answered your question.
Just a few more comments. All clear, said Grammy, and think some commented on the quality of the mobile network, which the colleague said is maybe better even than in Germany. That's a usual criticism here on local networks. So I think you may just go ahead then with your presentation.
Yeah, so the platform, it's basically, they're really like two, the kind of two products in a way. So one is the one access to Supermoto Emerging Echo, and it's basically a mobile app, and I can connect soon to the phone and show you also. But that's really meant a digital twin. It's basically meant to mirror the cook stove, but inside the app and connected to the blockchain. So every stove is minted as an NFT. We call it nifty because people don't like the word NFT, but it's essentially a very kind of advanced NFT. And I should give a disclaimer that I'm not the technician here. I know the broad strokes, but Ixo will be able to answer the deeper technical questions a lot better. But the app is basically more consumer facing, where you can offset your flight and so on. And you basically adopt a stove essentially, where you basically in the app you have the mirror image of the stove. And you see how it is used, you see how much pellets it buys, and so on. And I will connect with my phone here. And they're actually doing an upgrade to the chain tonight, so I hope there is no glitches. But so now I'm opening the app, ImpactX. And it's, I think they've really done an amazing job in making it feel like Web 2, but it's totally Web 3. So I have 19 stoves here, for example, and now it's a stove collection. It's called the Genesis collection, but you could also have solar pumps and e-mobility and other things. And I can see the stoves here. I can open a stove. I can see more about the asset. And potentially I could even get some information about the household. Of course, it's we're really looking at the the data integrity rules there. But for example, this is kind of depersonalized. I can see the cooking sessions. I can see how much fuel was purchased and so on. Eventually, other impact metrics also. And visit the household. Here we have some generic pictures where we have permission, but potentially there could be more information about the household. I can claim the carbon that's been generated. I can go back here if I want to offset the flight, for example. I can say, okay, 1 carbon is 1 kg, by the way. so it's very granular. I can take 1 kg here just for test. I can attribute it, and this is very important because often when carbon credits are not retired, it's not very clear what the attribution is. I could actually put a flight number or a e-ticket number here if I really want to show that for my particular flight, I attribute this specifically to that. I can also put in a country here. Put in Sweden now, for example, like that. And I sign it by pressing. And I can view it on the Explorer. So here, here you see the attribution, test, and jurisdiction SE. And of course, you can click further and go even further than that also. But I'll stop the sharing there. So that's one. What you saw now was the so-called Nifty, and I had several stoves. But let's say someone might have one stove. It's a digital twin. You basically is generating basically carbon credits over time, and of course, one stove might generate more than another one. And if I share my screen here now, we can see. Sorry, where is that? I have to just move. Zoom is a little bit intrusive here. Here. So app emerging echo. So here we have the first portfolio, which is 468 stoves we originally put in the Genesis collection. We're going to add some more soon. I can open that here. This is real-time data. You see, and we have a little bit backlog of verifications to do. It's not quite real-time yet. It will be close to real-time or closer to real-time. But in the next few days, we're doing quite a lot more. But you see here the usage, 31,000 clean cooking sessions. We released this in July. You also have fuel, how many kilos of pellets we bought, how much time was saved. It's of course an estimate, and how much money was saved and so on. And health is a bit hard to estimate, so we've kind of left that blank for now. So this is like the global picture. I can open a device here, and now you see it very much like the app. Same thing, I'm kind of going into a device now. I can also look at the batches here. For you, those of you familiar with carbon credits, here you have all the input parameters. And this is extremely powerful because all of these go into calculating the carbon credits. And if something changes over time, maybe there is a more research finding that the baseline stove efficiency should change. Someone who has offset carbon credits can very easily recalculate the carbon credits and kind of rebasing them. Every carbon credit can be unpacked into all of these things. We can look at the issuer here, the fuel purchase. We can look at all kinds of details, and everything is like clickable and so on. This is meant as a dashboard for companies, so that instead of emerging here, it could be a company name, and they could manage a portfolio of assets like this, could also retire carbon from here, and so on. And of course, I'm connected now through the web app. I've connected with the QR code through the web app. So here, when you click connect, you basically get the QR code coming up, and you connect with the app. Yeah, so that's in a nutshell what the platform is.
Thank you very much, Mattias, for this short introduction to this obviously very complex and very deep technology and approach, which obviously goes far beyond this use case you presented here. Cookie stoves obviously really has a huge potential. So there's one question in the chat, more technical one. Is there a firmware in the stove? Is a question.
Yes, so there is firmware in the stove, and it's I mean, it's first of all doing the functions of the stove, running the fan and charging the battery and so on, but it's also recording the most important things, and also connecting to the platform and sending the data.
Oh, I will have another question if it's okay, Ronald.
Sure.
Yeah, well, I ask myself if the people buy the stove, or do you rent it, or is it a crowdfunding, or how is it? How is it organized? Are they owning the stove? So
yeah, great. And I forgot to mention about the model. So they don't pay anything for the stove. They pay basically 120 kwacha, which is about $8, a subscription fee, a one-off fee. This is basically a membership. And I should say, in the beginning, we tried to sell the stove, and we reached the wrong people. We reached the people who could afford it, who were not using charcoal. After that, we tried the pay-go model, pay-as-you-go, where basically we create a loan contract with the customer, and they pay a little bit over time. But we had quite a terrible experience with many people paying a bit for the stove and then buying pellets on the side, and basically not paying for the stove. But also we didn't really know who was buying pellets, and it wasn't a viable model for us. It's only when about a year ago, when we created what we call the utility model, we said, okay, we're going to operate like a utility. We buy the assets, which is a big cost to us, but we buy the assets and we operate them in the most efficient way. We want people to buy ideally 30 kilos of pellets per month, but we have a little bit of leeway. The average is very close to that now. And if they don't use it, which some don't, and it's not a lot, but it's a small percentage, they use it much less or not at all. It could be broken, it could be different reasons, but then we follow up. We have a call center, and if it turns out that this was not a match customer, they don't need a stove or whatever it is, we take it back, we refurbish it, we change the battery if we have to, whatever, we polish it, and we give it to someone else. And of course, they might say, I prefer to have a new stove, and we say, sorry, some stoves are new, some are refurbished, and it works. So we really get a lot of juice out of the stoves, like a fleet of taxi cars. They should be running, this is the whole thing, because they are productive assets. They should be generating replacement of charcoal. They should be generating cooking hours. And it was a huge shift in our company, like how, on all levels now, every morning we have a call in the morning, 15-minute call. We just look at the dashboard, and so we have a Web2 dashboard, and I won't show it because it has some personal data, and that's otherwise I would have loved to show it, but it's basically the same data, but a little bit more graphs and things. And we look at that and we see the performance of the portfolio and everything. So the model is basically like, it's like a perpetual lease. But where could we take it from here? I mean, essentially, in the model we are trying to now gain traction with is that carbon credits pay for the stove, the users get to borrow it for free, and we run the company on pellet sales. And we have enough margins on the pellet sales to do so. We just need scale now. And we cannot, at this point, we can't really grow and just pay for the stoves. It's just too much working capital required. So we very much need the carbon credits. But really, we are giving pretty much all the carbon credits to the user. If you think of it, the cost of the stove, the landed cost is $80. The PCB, right now we're paying $19 for it. We can get the price down a bit, quite significantly, I think, probably by 30, 40%, maybe even 50%, or at least 30, 40%. So it costs a little bit with the connectivity, and the stove can generate about 3.5 carbon credits per year. If you used another methodology, we could probably have gotten 7 or 8 based on the efficiency. But because we don't get carbon credits when they are not used, it's really a more accurate estimate, I would say, than if we had used another methodology, which is used based on reported usage. You ask the customer, did you use the stove? Yes. Did you use it all the time? Yes. But we know that they are not used all the time. Stoves are used maybe 60 to 70% of the time. It's normal that people have everyone have so-called stove stacking, other solutions. But of course we can increase that a bit over time. But so the model really is, it's really great for everyone. If someone buys the carbon credits, it can work for us. We can grow and become a profitable company through pellet sales, which we are selling for about $270 a ton. That's enough to run. It's almost what used to be European prices. The customer save about 50% compared to charcoal. So there's a huge demand. Really, we're not selling the stove. We are like onboarding customers. It takes about 2 to 3 hours to onboard a customer. We have to check where they live and everything. So it's really the missing piece now, and maybe I should tell what the problem is with the existing carbon markets. I mean, there are many problems. It's great they exist. It's really great that there is payment for impact. And I'm not in the camp that say carbon credits are all crap and should be stopped. I'm not in that camp. I'm in the camp who says that carbon credits are flawed. They're often overcredited, and there is a lot of room for improvements, but we should work with what we have and make it better. But one of the problem is transparency and middlemen and, all of those things. But the other one is the time delays. It costs about $100,000 to register a carbon credit program. It takes about 2 years. And then to get the carbon credits, the first carbon credits issued, it takes another 12, even 18 months. And that is very precious time for a company that is very dependent on, working capital. And blockchain can solve all of this. The potential is real time. When someone buys a bag of pellets, a smart contract in the background, money that can also be distributed through smart contracts. So, and we're not quite at real time, but we can be down to one on daily, verifications soon. So Web3 holds an incredible potential. And again, like we said, this is not about cook stoves. This is the first use case. It's about devices. It could also be about other, a little bit harder to measure, but not impossible at all, areas like forestry and soil health, and maybe even other social impacts, cleaning up plastic, whatever. If you have good data in, and a proxy for impact, you can tokenize it. But the big thing is there a buyer? If there is no buyer, there's no point. And honestly, there is only buyers for carbon credits today. I hope it will change. And I hope the focus on carbon credits kind of becomes a bit less. It's more holistic, like many other things should be valued, biodiversity, for example, and other things. But this is the first use case. I see it as like the most obvious low-hanging fruit. But the potential is really to create an economy of impact. But of course, who is going to pay for that? It's probably not, or I don't know, I shouldn't have preconceived ideas. It could be, I should say, it could be private sector, it could be development finance, it could be crowd, individuals, or a combination thereof. But for a new world economy to emerge, impacts have to be incorporated somehow into the economy. And again, the carbon footprint is an obvious first one. But my view is that in a perfect world, all these negative externalities should come with a price. Positive externalities should come with a reward. And then you have a really new economy, and it's $1 trillion level change, which won't happen overnight. But this is kind of where, we, and I would say ICSO is very much on the same vision there, that, like we have to make that shift happen. And to me, Web3 is one of the most obvious, perfect tools to make that happen, in terms of, efficiency being one, but just like the transparency and the programmability and all of that.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I think that is really very broad spectrum of very interesting aspects. And I think the community is very much, I think, an audience that really appreciates this very concrete application of this technology. We are also thinking has this huge social transformation capability. So I think that resonates very well with what our community is also thinking. So there is one comment here on the chat, very cool and unique concept. So I just want to share this. Maybe one question from my side. If we look from the perspective now of the users, and as you shared with us that you focus currently on Zambia, so do you expect that this model can then also be basically transferred into other countries? So do you see any obstacles, whatever, in regulation or in technology-wise or usage-wise? So when we talk about upscaling, do we talk upscaling in Zambia, or do we talk upscaling maybe in Southern Africa as a region?
Absolutely. I think my hope with the platform is that it will, first of all, with the clean cooking sector, over 2 billion people need clean cooking in the world today. It has a global, greenhouse gas footprint on par with or even larger than the global aviations. So it's a gigaton a year, which is massive. And then, of course, we mentioned health and all the other things. And there's a lot of clean cooking companies that are just waiting. So we just launched this and we have made our first sales, but they're waiting to see some significant traction, like premium price. And, because no one wants to participate in this if no one is buying the outcome. But I'm very confident that we'll be able to show that traction very soon. And then there's a whole range of companies waiting to join, because basically the offer is wait 2 years, spend 50 to 100,000, and then wait another year for carbon credits, or spend a very low cost and very short time integrating. It's a minimal effort to integrate, and in some cases, you need to calculate different baselines and so on. But over time, it will be basically a software as a service. So the threshold could be like, orders of magnitude faster and cheaper to enter something like this, and same with getting it issued. So my hope is that many more companies in the clean cooking sector can join that are using another fuel, ethanol or pellets or biogas or electricity, for example. And then other sectors like off-grid solar and e-mobility and so on. And in terms of regions, and I'm sure, I see this as a seed, I'm sure people can come up with use cases for, any society really. It's all about is there a buyer for the outcome, and is there a way of measure accurately? Because we don't want crap data coming in. We don't want like very estimated self-reported stuff. It has to be quality data that's coming in, and then there has to be, of course, calculation and a proxy and a methodology and so on. But really, the hard work is having good data and then having an outcome buyer. So really, it's the technology is not the issue now. The bulk of the work has gone into this platform is already there. There's a lot of refinements happening also, and so on, to the user experience and UI and all of that. But it's really about basically creating markets for this. And then, of course, we try to also really navigate this space carefully, because there's a lot of bad stuff in the crypto world, a lot of really rough speculative scams and all of that, and it's the same as internet. Is internet good or is it bad? It's a technology, and I think this is the use case for blockchain and Web3 that is can be really, really transformative. So we're trying to navigate this, really carefully, because frankly, the crypto community is still very young, I think, and we don't want to kind of create a speculative economy. Like, in principle, I think, for example, carbon credits should be ideally retired very quickly. I'm not saying they should be retired immediately necessarily. There can be some degree of trading and so on that can be positive. But like, if carbon credits fly around for 10 years, or it's just like, they should really be they should be burnt and then move on to create something new. And of course, the base for this, what we're talking about, the Nifty, the NFT is a container, a data container, and the output is carbon tokens. And of course, carbon tokens can be changed for other tokens potentially. It's not really the focus or even the role or even intention, but there might be secondary markets developing and all kinds of layers. But I've also seen a lot of things that I don't think is wholesome, like when it becomes extreme derivatives and there's all this leverage and things. I don't think that necessarily is a healthy development always. So we try to operate and also, of course, try to be very inclusive to the existing carbon actors, like the registries, which have done a tremendous job of developing a lot of methodologies and so on. But also they need to very quickly transition to digital MRVs. Because honestly, pen and paper is ancient history. It's like, why should, when a company has this kind of data, why should processes take so long? They are still long at the moment. I know there's a lot of positive changes there, but I think, I hope that this example will catalyze something, and I hope it will lead to a really thriving kind of outcome-based economy. We'll find out. It's like, let's find out and see what happens.
Thank you very much. There is one more question in the chat, which is again focusing more on the user side. So I think you touched it already briefly, the question of data security and privacy for the users, because as you said, there is a lot of data which is created through this device. So how is this? How do you deal with this challenge in a way?
Yeah. So there is no personal data on the blockchain. What we do is that, first of all, we register the device. The device is a serial number, it's a model and so on, and it's set up as a digital certificate on IPFS. So every device is a unique identity, and every fuel cell is tied to that. So everything is device centric. There are no names, no phone numbers in here. They're devices, serial numbers, and of course. Also, that we have to be very careful with, and I think I know that ICSO is looking very carefully and closely at this, and have thought. I mean, ICSO has like a really 10-year history. Of course, before the blockchain was released. But there are many years of thinking about this. So, for example, you saw the visit the household. That would be private data to the owner of the NFT, but right now we're not showing any of that. We're showing generic pictures, but it's also. I mean, I'm looking at other examples, and of course, there are platforms like Kiva where you crowdfund, and there you have a picture of the customer who is asking for a loan, and it's a public displayed, and of course they have waivers that the customer has given their consent, and so on. I mean, what I can say is that it's extremely important, and we take all the measures that we can, and we'll continue to develop that part, and hopefully also get certified, ISO certified soon. So that's our intention to bring that in, and also other certifications about that.
Is there any further question to Mattias?
Yes, I've just been looking at the dashboards and some things you've shared, and they've come a really long way in the last few months. It's impressive to see, and just the degree of transparency and visibility in the data, that everything can be checked and verified. The question I have is around the verification, the causal AI and the methodologies. From what I've seen, that seems to be the bit where there's the least transparency. Is there a way around that using blockchain technologies and similar processes that have been used elsewhere?
Yeah. So I'm a little bit out of my depth here, because I honestly don't know so much about it, and ICSO could give a much better answer there. But I'll pull up a slide on that here soon also. But what I understand is that it's not a the type of AI is one that is it is very much it's not a black box. It's basically based on first there are like logical tests, like and let me just pull up the slide here soon. So it's rules based. I'll share here. So there are certain rules first. Like, for example, if the cooking session is shorter than a certain length, it's rejected because it's probably not the cooking session, and if it's too long, it's probably finished cooking and so on. So there are certain rules, and they're evaluated, and then there's certain hypotheses which are also developing, I believe, and the learning part is part of it also. Yeah, honestly, I feel out of my depth explaining this, but maybe it means a bit more to you. There's also a concept of impact bonds, and I'm slightly moving off the topic here, but it's really to have a over time evolving risk analysis of, you know, in the beginning, an investment has high risk and so on, but I didn't actually answer your question with that one. Yeah, sorry for the slightly vague answer, but hopefully more can also be put out on that. But what I should say is that the methodology itself only looks at fuel cells, you know, so the whole causal AI is really, it's on top of it, you know, like the methodology is basically using fuel cells as a proxy, and we've verified the fuel cells. We could have stopped there, you know. There's really like I mean, if I take a step back, like how probably 99% of all cook-stove carbon credits are generated is based on some degree of more estimated usage. Of course, fuel cell is also an estimated, but it is typically based on asking the user, did you use the stove, and so on. And it's a sampled, it's basically self-reported, and it's sampled like 100 stoves out of a larger cohort and so on. And what we are doing is taking 100% of fuel cells. So, and that's the level the methodology goes to, but the causal AI is going beyond that. And so it's really, if anything, there is more rejection, you know, like the causal AI does not take, if there is not a fuel cell, the causal AI won't make it turn it into carbon credits. So it's really like going beyond, but I can appreciate your question also. And, you know, so for the exact mechanics of how it is, but it's possible that we can publish more on that. But yeah, basically the main message is that that is really, it's another layer of verification. And if anything, it rejects more than if it just had the fuel cells.
Thank you, that helps a lot.
Maybe one more question from my side. Just wanted to ask, what do you think about the attack vectors of the solution? So as far as I understand, is there's an IoT device that sends data somewhere to the blockchain, or it's also verified via an AI model. But what about the possibility of faking that data or manipulating the device?
Yeah, so we have so one way of mitigating that would be to have a trusted execution environment, basically where on the firmware and the hardware level, it's basically signed, and it would add more costs, and we are not able to take on more cost. I mean, they would also use, you know, more battery and all of those things. So it's about, the question is, what's the appropriate level at this point, you know, for an $80 stove. But the most important point is that it's what matters is the fuel cell. It's really, that is the proxy for usage. And the methodology doesn't even require IoT data. The methodology is only requiring the fuel cell, the proof of fuel cell. So the IoT data is really on top of it. So it's like an added layer, but absolutely, let's say there was a bug in the firmware that over-reported or exaggerated or under-reported or whatever the bug was, or it was not reporting. That's all possible. There's also the connectivity issues we talked about. So my view of, at least for this application, IoT data is not totally reliable, you know, in terms of connectivity. And of course, there's always a possibility that there would be a bug in the firmware, for example. But the main point is that the transactional data is the one that it will be extremely hard to fake that. It would mean like literally colluding with the telco, which would be a level of, you know, of collusion that would be like quite extreme. So I think that is giving it a lot of, you know, like strength. But I mean, this is, I see this as a beginning, you know, I see this as, you know, room for improvements on so many levels, you know, but I think we really try to take it really, really far with what makes sense now. You know, if the world develops $50 carbon credits, you know, then probably everyone should have trusted execution environment. You know, probably there should be other layers, but like in this very turbulent market where, you know, and there is this big Berkeley report coming out soon publicly with, or, you know, it will probably be more, it is on a public website today, but it will probably be picked up more soon. And it's giving a scathing criticism to cook stove carbon. They've done an incredibly deep analysis and saying there's a lot of overcrediting. And one of the main, and they're saying that the gold standard metered is the only robust technology. So one of the criticisms is that the usage is estimated, you know, if you have self-reported and so on. So I see this as a step of development. And if carbon credits crash to $2, $3, I mean, honestly, then it doesn't even make sense to do what we're doing. If it in the future, as some of these bullish predictions have pointed to, it goes to a lot more, then we need to up the game and probably add more layers. Or I think AI can really, really help a lot. It can really, it's basically like fraud detection. It's like with credit cards, it doesn't give you 100%, it gives you probability. Yeah, so absolutely, I mean, room for improvement. But honestly, I think that, yeah, we've taken this pretty far with what we have and what is available today, and it's a first step.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, of course, you're absolutely right. No technology is perfect, and it's a great starting point what you've built. Thank you.
So Mattias, thank you very much. I don't see any more questions in the chat. Is there anyone, any question now who wants to voice it? I don't see any signals here. So then I would say again, thank you very much. I think it was a very interesting, very inspiring talk, to me at least. We saw the very positive feedback in the chat. Most probably, or hopefully, I should say, that's only the beginning of that story, and we hear a lot more, other use cases, growth, and specifically also that the product of this, the carbon credits, really find their markets, and so that the loop is closed. So I wish you all the best for this, and to your team, and thank you very much again for your time and your contribution to the meetup. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. It was really great. Thanks.